Oh my goodness. Wow. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me in this conversation. Um, this, for those of you who have not attended one of these before, um, this is part of my live workshop, live learning series. Um, and so I'm so happy to have you here. Um, For those of you who do not know me, my name is Shauna. I am the founder of Kalana Yoga, an online yoga studio and community dedicated to serving busy moms. And this is a workshop series, a live learning workshop series that I host in my Facebook group, Yoga and Mindfulness for Busy Moms. And today we're going to talk about a topic that is off the mat. First off, again, I do want to thank you for being here and apologize if I sound a little congested. My 1-year-old daughter did get me a bug. I'm feeling fine, but she just she brings home the gift of germs from daycare, and I'm still working through my congestion from her. So I appreciate your patience as I am presenting through this. Um, but yes, so this is a workshop series, a live learning workshop series, and today we're going to talk about yoga off the mat, in how yoga can actually um, help influence our language. And I think that this is a really important time to be having this conversation, because I think that we are amidst a lot of different situations that really evoke high emotions from people. And that's valid. Those emotions are completely valid. I am not trying to diminish why we have such strong feelings about a variety of topics that we um, are dealing with right now as a society. You know, in the United States, obviously, we are amidst a very contentious and consequential presidential election that has got a lot of people very passionate. And I think that that passion comes through sometimes very spontaneous, or without a lot of pre-thought. Sometimes it just kind of comes very instinctually. And I think that if we say that we want to learn about yoga, which I'm assuming that you do because you're with me today, that we want to be an example of how to conduct ourselves in our community, as someone that we want people to look up to. It's really easy to be a keyboard warrior. I know I'm guilty of it myself. Um, and I think that if we can remind ourselves or continue to learn and deepen our yoga practice off the mat, it might help influence how we treat each other online and offline, and hopefully bring a little more community, a little more unity, and kindness and compassion, even though we have very difficult subjects that we need to talk about. I'm not trying to say that we don't talk about these things, and you'll learn that more in the presentation today. So let me begin. We have a lot to cover today, and I am going to try to be respectful of our time and do it, expeditiously. So here's what is on the agenda for today. First, we're just going to set some intentions. I'm going to share with you sort of what I'm trying to achieve with this exercise, with this presentation. I would love to introduce some yoga concepts that we are going to be diving into today, and those are the yamas and the niyamas. And finally, we'll talk about how to integrate some of these practices, some of the knowledge that we're learning today into our daily life. So let's dive right in. So, hello. As I shared, my name is Shauna. I'm coming to this presentation as a yoga teacher teaching off the mat. So I'm not teaching poses, we're not teaching flexibility or strength or balance. What we're teaching today are yoga values and yoga philosophy. So if you have had, any experience with yoga so far, you might have gained a little bit of exposure to some of the rich ancient wisdom that yoga has carried with it throughout its life cycle. And there's a lot of philosophy and values that is actually taught in yoga amidst all of the movement as well. So there's actually 8 limbs on the path of yoga, and we are going to talk about the first 2 paths today, the yamas and the niyamas, which have nothing to do with moving your body. It's really all about our mind. Now, I will be completely honest with you. I do not claim to be an expert in this field of the yamas or the niyamas or yoga philosophy. I consider myself a student right alongside you who has done some research and has tried to learn a little bit more so that I can share what I do know and hopefully provide a great context for how we can take this knowledge and apply it to our daily life. So, I don't want to go too deep into the yoga philosophy because we don't have that much time, but I just want to be clear that that's where I'm coming to this from. I'm coming to this as a student and as somebody who does, teach yoga. So I'm hoping to learn right alongside you. Okay, so let's dive into the meat of our conversation. So, we are talking about the yoga concepts of the yamas and the niyamas. So, the yamas and the niyamas are the first and second limbs of yoga. Like I mentioned, there are 8 limbs, there's an 8-limb path of yoga, and these are 2 of them. These are the first 2 because these 2 really help us navigate and guide us on how to interact with ourselves and the outside world. So the yamas are considered ethical restraints. The word yama in Sanskrit is referring to controlling or reining in. Social ethics that can guide worldly conduct. So, yamas are really about how we interact with each other. How do we practice some awareness and self control in certain situations in order to benefit the greater society, the greater good. And then the niyamas are more about how we interact with ourselves. These are our personal observances. The word niyama in Sanskrit is for rules or guidelines or observances. And this, again, really guides our relationship with ourself. So there are 5 in each. There are 5 yamas and there are 5 niyamas. So there's 10 total concepts that we'll be talking about today. Obviously, this goes much deeper into the concepts of the niyamas and the yamas go much deeper than what we're going to cover today. I really want this to serve as sort of an introduction to these concepts and then share really how these can relate to the subject at hand, communication, and how we talk to each other. So those are the examples that I will be drawing upon as we learn about these concepts. But just know that these concepts are not limited to communication. They're not limited to the examples that we're showing today. There is a wealth of knowledge and there's a wealth of opportunity to apply these in our lives, and I just wanted to give you one specific sliver of examples. Alrighty, so let's start with the yamas. Like I said, there are 5 yamas, and I'm going to share with you what they are, and I'm going to share with you how they can help us and how we want to not assume what they mean. So let's dive into this. So ahimsa is the first yama, and that is referring to non-harming. So in the context of communication, this would be like non-harming communication using kind, compassionate, and non-violent language, even when addressing strong opinions. So to practice ahimsa in your language is to not use violent or harmful language. It's just to not say words that would lead someone to creating harm, harming of themselves or harming of anyone else. It's thinking about what you're going to say before you say it and asking, is this going to evoke violence or harm? And if it is, then maybe I shouldn't say it. What this does not mean is that you need to avoid tough conversations. Ahimsa allows for disagreement, but encourages us to express it without attacking or demeaning others. So, what it means is paying attention to our language before we say it and asking, does this cause harm? Harming of somebody physically, emotionally? Does it actually cause harm? But what it does not mean is avoiding these conversations altogether. And I want you to understand that that is going to be a theme throughout the conversation. This conversation is not about not saying things. Sometimes we're actually going to be called to speak up. Sometimes that's what the yoga is telling us to do, is to actually raise our hand and say, I disagree with that. It's not about tamping down our own opinions and our own ability to speak. It's about doing so in a way that is constructive, compassionate, kind, and non harming. I wish there was an easier way for me to change these slides around. Satya is the next yama, and that refers to truthfulness. So, as we are communicating with each other, are we being truthful? Satya encourages speaking truth with honesty and integrity. Satya balances truth with compassion, ensuring that honesty is expressed without causing unnecessary harm. What Satya does not mean, it does not mean being brutally honest and causing harm by being truthful. Satya does not justify using the truth as a weapon to hurt or belittle others. So, when we're thinking about our language, whether it is internally or externally, whether it's online or offline, are we sure that we're speaking truth? And are we speaking truth for the right reasons? Are we just trying to get someone or to win a conversation by being nasty just because, oh, but it's not wrong? Or are we able to find the truth and either defend it or speak it in a way that is kind and compassionate and not causing harm? There's a line with all of these, right? Everything is a spectrum. There's a line between using these concepts for kindness and compassion and a greater good, or the intention of trying to harm somebody or belittle them or win over them. Asteya, non-stealing. So in communication, asteya can mean non-stealing someone's time or energy by dominating conversations or speaking over others. It emphasizes listening as a part of respectful dialogue. Now, what this does not mean is it does not mean just staying silent to avoid conflict. It is about mindfully sharing and not withholding your voice. So, are you being fair and listening to somebody else's perspective to understand where they're coming from, or are you just trying to steamroll them because that feels good, that feels rewarding, that gives you a little hit of dopamine to be like, I won, I was right? So, these are the concepts that we're learning how to reflect upon and hopefully guide our decisions and how we communicate with each other to make it a little bit more positive, a little bit more fair. Brahmacharya. So brahmacharya refers to moderation, and this encourages moderation in speech, avoiding extremes like over-explaining, gossiping, or speaking in anger. It asks us to speak mindfully and with purpose. So this does not mean, again, suppressing your voice. It is not about not speaking. It is about using your words thoughtfully rather than impulsively. Have you ever put your foot in your mouth? Have you ever said something that you were like, ooh, probably should have stopped a sentence ago? Brahmacharya is guiding us, or really trying to help us not get into those situations. And by being able to practice moderation, if you're not 100% sure that something is true and you just heard it as a rumor, going back to truthfulness, satya, let's maybe not say it. Maybe let's hold back a little bit of maybe what we're thinking and not speak it if it's going to cause or perpetuate more harm, whether it's gossip or a rumor. um, and this does apply to things even online. So if you see a meme or an article or a post of somebody else's, are you double checking that that's actually factual before you just share it back out to your network? These concepts apply very strongly online, and I think that's where we can actually try to practice some of these. Any time we can really practice a lot of this immediately. Aparigraha, non-attachment. So, aparigraha is really referring to letting things go. And sometimes when we feel really strongly about an argument, or we have a passionate opinion about something, we don't want to let it go. And there's balance to that, right? There's a purpose, and there's a purpose for being persistent and persevering to get something done. But sometimes we get a little too caught up in things that really are not serving us or the greater good or the person that we're communicating with. So aparigraha encourages letting go of the need to always be right or to win an argument. Aparigraha helps us release attachment to our own views and make space for others' perspectives. This does not mean detaching from your values. Aparigraha doesn't mean you stop caring, but it helps you release ego-driven conflict. So that is the key term here, ego-driven. This is going to require a lot of self-awareness and maybe some internal reflection to see, where is my need, my desire, where is this intention coming from? Why do I feel the need to persist about sharing a specific point of view, or speaking up against something? Now, sometimes it's coming from a deep desire to do the right thing. Maybe you feel very strongly, and I'm not going to go into examples on this right now, but I think that if I think that you can think of examples in your own value system and the things that are important to you. Um, and how also I think you can see examples, how also you see this reflected in our online dialogues, right? Are we just trying to get one over on someone and one up them and win for the sake of winning? Are we actually wondering why somebody else might have the view that they have? And is there room for that space to hear them out and hear what they have to say, or ask them genuine questions to learn more, versus just telling them that they are wrong or stupid or a bad citizen or whatever? You know, these are the things that I see a lot, that I wish we could reflect with um, a little more aparigraha, a little more ability to let it go. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't fight for causes. It doesn't mean that you don't stand up for what you believe in. But it means coming to the center with open arms and being willing to listen to what somebody else has to say. And when you do speak, doing so from a place of trying to help them understand where you're coming from, and not just trying to win or dominate the conversation. So being able to discern when your ego is in the driver's seat and when your true self of wanting to create a good cause, which one of those is leading the conversation? And that's really hard for us to discern, especially in the moment. But maybe we can look back at different conversations that we've had and ask ourselves, was that my ego driving for a desire to be right, to win at the expense of maybe a relationship that I thought I cared about? Or was I actually trying to change that person's mind, and was I open to listening to their point of view? So those were the yamas. Now we're going to switch gears and go into the niyamas. So again, these really are more internally focused. These are more about our relationship with ourself, whereas the yamas were really about interacting with other people. But it's all connected, right? So you're going to see still a lot of examples and ways of thinking about things that pertain to our conversation with other people. So, Sausha, purity, this encourages purity of thoughts and words. This means clear, intentional communication that is free from negative emotions or anger or judgment. So, this is really talking about where are your intentions coming from? Kind of like we just talked about in non attachment. What are you bringing to the table? Are you bringing your ego? Or are you bringing pure intentions for trying to understand and trying to be understood and trying to learn and come to an agreement? This does not mean avoiding difficult conversations or purity in the sense of perfection. It's about keeping your intentions clear and aligned with kindness. So really, this comes back to intentions. What are you bringing to the table? What is in your bag? What baggage are you bringing to the table? Santosha. So we've had conversations about Santosha in different live learnings. Santosha is related to contentment. So Santosha means contentment. And in the context of conversations, Santosha encourages contentment in your conversations, finding peace in being heard rather than always needing agreement. This helps reduce the urgency to argue or prove yourself. This does not mean passive acceptance of harmful behavior or opinions. Santosha allows you to stay grounded in your truth without needing validation. Sometimes you are right about something, even if you are having a conversation with someone who does not think that you're right. And I don't mean opinion right, I mean factually right. Like sometimes you're just right about something. Like, A did happen. It just happened. Now, when you're having a conversation with someone, you can come to the table with, I need you to agree that I am right. And you have this need, this urge, this desire to be validated that you are right. What Santosha is encouraging us to do is to say, I am right. I know I'm right. I will gladly keep having this conversation if you are willing to show you that I'm right. But if you refuse to agree, I'm going to walk away not being upset about it. I'm not going to let this lack of agreement, this lack of us being in agreement on the exact same page on this issue, I can be at peace with knowing that I'm right. And again, when it comes to opinions, this may not be that applicable, or maybe I changed my mind actually. Yeah, it's still applicable with opinions. I mean, sometimes you're just not going to agree with someone, and at the end of the day, you have to be okay with walking away knowing that you are true to yourself, without causing a harmful, negative argument just because you want somebody else to see things the way that you do. Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of great examples for how these can apply to our language. So there's a couple more. We have tapas. discipline. This also came up in a different line of learning that we had. So what this is encouraging is discipline in communication, helping you stay committed to mindful and non-reactive speech even in difficult moments. I mean, I am a person of passion. I am a mom. I know you too, right? Like, we get into situations where sometimes our temper just takes over. And, like, I get it. What this is teaching us, what this is helping us improve upon ourselves, is being able to hold our tongue and not say something that we might regret. It's having the discipline to be mindful even when you get distracted or even when something else happens that really makes your blood boil and raises your heart rate. Like, those things are going to happen. And what tapas is really teaching us is yes, those are going to happen. And it's up to us to practice the discipline anyway. It's up to us to commit to being mindful and not stooping to the level that our anger or our temper might want to take us to in that split second. Because we know if we just give ourselves a minute, then we'll calm down and we never would have said that thing that we are thinking about saying or we may have accidentally said. So this really speaks to being able to control ourselves in the moment and having the discipline to do so even when it's really hard. What this does not mean is rigid control or shutting down emotions. Tapas is about the ongoing practice of choosing your words carefully. So it's not about just giving up and saying, I can't deal with this and walking away. It's about committing to the practice of still speaking truthful, non harming, mindfully, all these other things that we're learning about. It's about practicing them even when it gets hard. And that's what discipline is, right? Discipline is doing hard things when they're hard. Alrighty, we're almost getting to the end here, so good job, everyone. Alrighty, Svadhyaya is self-study. So this really encourages our own introspection on how our thoughts and emotions are affecting our words. This is deep. Svadhyaya invites us to examine our triggers and responses in conversations. Do you just know that if somebody brings up a specific topic, that you just feel your rage or your blood pressure or your anxiety just float to the top? So learn what those triggers are and allow yourself to ask, why am I so triggered by this? Why am I responding so emphatically and emotionally over this term or this word or this topic or this argument? Like, why is it affecting me in this way? That is what Svadhyaya is encouraging us to do. And maybe there's really not something that you're going to do differently, but knowing where those triggers are coming from, I think can help us better prepare for them and maybe put them into a different perspective over time. These are not things that you're just going to wake up and be able to do one day. It's going to take practice, and that practice of self-discovery is ultimately going to make it easier to identify the situations that allow you to practice all of these concepts that we have been learning today. This does not mean overanalyzing every conversation and becoming self-critical. Svadhyaya helps us become aware of our patterns without judging ourselves. So this isn't about putting judgment on yourself. Oh man, I'm a terrible person because I get triggered by this thing. No, it is about just understanding and having compassion for yourself, that you now understand that this affects you in this way. Maybe you'll dig a little deeper and understand why it is impacting you in this way. And, maybe you can heal that over time. But this is not about putting judgment on yourself or blaming yourself or thinking that you are better or worse than anyone else in this realm, in this conversation. We are all doing the best that we can. And if we all take a little bit more opportunity to examine ourselves and what triggers us to go down paths that maybe we don't love for ourselves, then we can come back to that center of who we really want to be and take a better path forward. So I hope that is making sense. I mean, this is not about right or wrong. This is just about getting a little bit better, but understanding how. Alrighty, our last niyama is Ishvara Pranidhana. This is referring to surrender to a higher power. So Ishvara Pranidhana encourages surrender and trust in something greater, allowing you to release the need for control in conversations. It teaches patience, humility, and openness. It is not your job to change everyone's mind. It's just not. You are one drop in an ocean. I am one drop in an ocean. We are all one drop in an ocean. It is not our job to change the direction of the tide. That's not our place. There is something higher in the works, right? Whatever you believe that to be is different. This is not a religion, or this is not specifying what that higher power is. This is just saying that I can't control everything. So I have to be able to let it go, coming back to that non-attachment, and allow myself to just do my part and know that I'm doing the best that I can without putting the weight of the entire world on my shoulders. That's what I want this to feel like for you, is that we are not trying to control everything, and we are not trying to control other people. All we're trying to do is better ourselves. Just get 10% better in little ways over time, because that will ultimately make us happier and make us better versions of ourselves. And that's kind of the goal, right? What this does not mean is giving up or surrendering your values. Instead of trusting that you don't have to force your point of view for change to happen. Instead, it is about trusting that you don't have to force your point of view for change to happen. So if I feel very strongly about something, I can still speak it. That's not saying like, oh, well, I shouldn't do anything because I can't control the whole ocean. No. Collectively, all of our drops in the ocean change the tide, right? Like collectively, we have power. But there is a difference between saying, oh, I give up, I can't do anything at all, I have no power here, why bother? There's a difference between that end of the spectrum and the other end of the spectrum, which is everything relies on me. I am the sole hero of the universe and I have to fix everything. Those are the two polar opposites of the spectrum. So we're trying to find the center. We're trying to find the balance between I care about my values. I am going to speak to support the things that I believe in. I'm not just going to sit on the sidelines. I'm going to do my part, but I'm going to understand that it's not all up to me. We all have to do our part. And at the end of the day, what's going to happen is what's going to happen. And I can give my 100%, but I can't give 100% for everybody else. And we have to let go of the results and deal with the situations that arise at that point. I would love to hear how this is landing and resonating for you. I'm really curious if you are feeling like this is making sense, this desire to find balance between these different polarizing ends of the spectrum on all 10 of these topics. Or are you, maybe I'm not explaining it very well. Maybe I'm confusing you. I'd love to know how this is resonating with you. Does this make sense? Do you feel like with these practices that you can become, teeny bit better, a little bit of a better version of you. Because we all have a little bit more to grow each and every day. And that compounds over time. Okay, integration. So, how are we going to use some of this knowledge that we have just gained in the last 35 minutes? So, first, I would love it if you could just take a moment to reflect on a time that maybe your actions were not in alignment with the guidelines that we just learned about. Maybe you can think of a very clear example that is coming to mind right away. Or maybe this will take a little bit more of a introspection to see, have I acted in such a way that I have allowed my ego to get in the driver's seat and take over and let my temper run wild, and I was not very measured, or I could have done more, or I could have done less, right? Like just reflect, and not for judgment, not for judgment. Just to reflect, just to understand where you're coming from. We are all flawed. I am not coming at you saying that I have done these things correctly myself. What I'm just saying is that I'm trying to be better. And this is one way that I'm trying. And I'd love to have you alongside me on that journey. But after we reflect on different examples in our past where we probably could have done a little bit better, now that you have this knowledge and these guidelines, sure, this is going to take more time to integrate. But now that you have this knowledge is power. You can't unlearn these things. So, can you commit to trying to integrate and implement some of these practices in future conversations before you share a post about something that really, feeds your ego about, trying to one up the other side or make somebody look stupid. Maybe you can reflect on some of the guidelines that we learned today and try to connect with your inner yogi and say, is this 100% true? Is this necessary? Am I doing this to further my values, or am I doing this because it feeds my ego and throws that rabid dog a bone that it might make me feel worse afterwards? That's one example of how we might improve going forward with this valuable knowledge that we just learned. So that's how I'm hoping that we'll be able to integrate this. And the last piece I'll say about integration is, I mostly am talking, usually I'm trying to connect with fellow moms. This is not a conversation just for moms. This is for everybody. But that's usually who my audience is. I'm trying to talk to and attract and speak to other moms. And as a mom, I know that I felt a higher standard once I had my kids. Once I know that somebody else is going to, see me in that light as their leader, as their example, it makes me want to be better. So whether or not you are a mom or a leader, you are a leader. Whether or not you consider it, you have leadership. Every single one of us is a leader to someone. Maybe it's somebody you don't even know, but you are always leading by your example. So this integration, this knowledge can help us all become better leaders, whether we are moms trying to raise strong, confident, knowledgeable, kind, compassionate, helpful, good human beings, or whether we just want to be a good influence for somebody else in our community, in our household, in our neighborhood, in our job. You have the power to influence people by perpetuating the values that you care most about. And with this knowledge, hopefully you'll be able to reflect on what those values are and really turn up the dial on the positive ones and allow yourself to turn down the dial on the negative things that live within all of us. We're all human, we all have a balance. And I don't want this to sound too preachy or like I'm trying to, lecture you on this, but I just feel like we all have so much opportunity to be better versions of ourselves. And these are just really good tools that we can use to help us get there. So that is what I have for you today. Thank you so much for joining me live, for joining me live. And thank you so much for watching the replay. When you do, this is a great conversation. I am so open to your feedback. If there is something that you feel like I was unclear on, or that you would like to disagree with me about or challenge me on, I am so open to that. So please know that I would love to have a dialogue with you about this. If there's more that I could have added, this should not be the first and only conversation that we have about this. I'm really hoping that we can keep this conversation going, especially as we have even more situations arising where people are having a hard time communicating with one another in a positive and productive and compassionate way. Let's not be keyboard warriors. Let's be human beings that are trying to find connection even with people that we disagree with. So let's keep this conversation going. Give me your feedback. Tell me how we can make this better. Let's do this again with a different angle. And yeah, thank you. Thank you for being with me. Have a great rest of your day, and I will see you on the next one.